I, Saurav Motiwala, a renewables and sustainability professional, currently working as a consultant for the World Bank Group and also helping other companies to work on their sustainability and renewable energy portfolios. I welcome you all from this beautiful place, Bastar, Chhattisgarh. So today I would be speaking on my experience regarding sustainability and how it is way beyond what we think. If we just do solarization of an area or a particular city, we think we have covered the sustainability aspect, but it's not the fact. We have a lot of other things which we have to consider while talking about sustainability. So this session would be more about a few practical things which we as an individual could do. So as we continue to adjust to the new normal, I hope that you are all are safe at home. Firstly and most importantly, I would like to thank Krishna Kaushik ji and Repki Foundation to invite me to deliver this session. Thanks to you all who have dedicated your valuable time for this session. It's a very special feeling to be speaking on such a topic which is close to your heart. I will try to discuss points which are practical and in a way implementable as well. Most of the points which we would be covering today may lead to small interventions to your daily lifestyle. However, all the points may not be for everyone to adopt. Moreover, if you may also observe a common theme which could be connecting all the points which we'd be discussing here today. So let's start. So, what's sustainability to a layman? It means living more sustainable, using things which before I would deem to which we used to think which is very unimportant, and we find of ways of utilizing different things around us that we would have never thought of utilizing it in a way before. If it comes consciously to us that we want to live in a manner that did not that does not destroy the earth or other people or other species which are around, and these are, I think, whatever steps we are thinking of, those steps might be very little at the moment, but when we talk about and the impact of it, it's very significant. So what we can do is we can make a gradual start, make a list of things which we want to do, and this also help us to express our gratitude towards the nature, and it can be linked to our happiness, our health and well-being. So thinking of a very different perspective, as we are all aware, India has now six of its cities of the in the world's top 10 polluted cities in across the globe, and on an estimated number 1.24 million people every year uh, die due to these issues related to pollution, particularly air pollution. So we have to definitely think on ways which we plan our life, how we should adopt our lifestyle so that we don't harm the nature as well as we develop. So sustainable development is all about those practices in which we continue to progress in a sustained manner. We look for future prospects, but at the same time we take care of the nature and the environment around us. We try to make a conscious call where we don't harm the environment. Also we work on how we progress as an individual and as a society as well. So when we talk about this topic, we should also talk about the sustainable development goals, which are a collection of 17 global goals um, which have been agreed upon by the nations worldwide, and it has been these SDGs were set in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly, and these goals are intended to be achieved by the year 2030s. And these SDGs build on decades of work experience by different countries and the United Nations. So we will just go through all the 17 SDGs which have been agreed. First one is regarding poverty. which is the first goal is called as no poverty, which tries to end all poverties in all forms everywhere across the globe. Then we have zero hunger. End hunger, achieves food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. So we talk about how we can achieve uh, food security and look for different kinds of business model where we make the agriculture more sustainable. Third is on goodness, good health and well-being. Fourth is on providing quality education and ensuring equitable quality education and promote long life learning opportunities for all. Fifth is on gender equality, specific to empowering all women and girls. Sixth is on clean water and sanitation, ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Seventh is on affordable and clean energy, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Eighth is on decent work and economic growth, promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Ninth goal is on industry innovation and infrastructure, build resilient infrastructure which promotes inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. 10th is on reducing inequality within and among countries. 11th is on sustainable cities and communities, how we can build cities which are more resilient and sustainable. 12th goal is upon responsible consumption and production. 13th is on the climate action, taking urgent actions to combat climate change and its impact. 14th is on life below water, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. 15th is on life on land, protecting and restoring and promoting sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, managing the forest, combating desertification. 16th is on peace, justice, and strong institution, promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. 17th is on partnerships for the goals, strengthening the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. So as we can see from the sustainable development goals, these are all interlinked within themselves. And when we talk about a particular agenda, say it water, say it health and sanitation, say it any other thing, we have to think upon it on a holistic term rather than strictly thinking on energy or sustainable use of resources. So this pandemic time offers a very good chance to reset and reshape the world in a more sustainable way. It is to us as an individual and as corporation to take ownership for the future. So now let us discuss few steps which we as individuals can look up to for minimizing our carbon footprints. Because whatever activities we do on a general basis, we don't try to realize what kind of carbon footprints we are in a way generating and how it is impacting our environment around us. So first we talk about waste management. As we all know, whatever goods we use on a daily basis, those contains lot of plastics. Each year, seafood provides the primary protein source for approximately 3 billion people. And most of the plastics, when we don't treat them properly after use, they land up in our oceans, and from which most of us are dependent for seafoods. So in a way, it enters our food chain, and at the end we consume it, whatever plastics we have generated. Then we have to also think how we are how as a society or how as a city the waste management thing has been planned. Because when we realize, okay, we have okay, we have a policy called three bin policy where we segregate different types of waste and give it to the authorities, to the people coming over daily in the morning to collect the waste. But ultimately, when those people who are being authorized to take that waste, when they take that waste and dump it, so that process we have to be aware how they are taking it, because mostly in cities, when we have a deeper look into the system, into the waste management plan, we realize that okay, when we are segregating the waste at our household, that is fine, but when we ultimately give it to the people who are coming to collect that waste from municipalities, they actually mix the entire waste, and ultimately it ends up in the landfill sites, or they are burned directly into there. So we have to make a conscious effort to make ourselves aware about how the waste management plan is being done in our city, and if as an individual we can like take initiatives to question the municipality how they are going about their waste management plan, and in a way, if we can help them in devising a very stringent waste management plan, maybe it could be through awareness in our societies, or maybe structuring a plan for the municipality. Then, when we talk about waste management, we talk about three R's, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle. So, while we talk about reduce, we simply ask, we should simply ask yourself if you really need something and if it's going to bring value to your life. Whenever we think of a particular product or a thing which we are using on our daily day-to-day basis, we have to think upon whether it is valuable to me and how it is adding value to my life. Then we talk about reuse. We avoid all single-use items and focus on items that are long-term use. Then recycle. Make sure that whatever you are recycling is not just wish recycling, and it actually gets recycled. And all the three R's which we have discussed, as we all know, they are in order. The first in order is reduce, then reuse, and then recycling is the last option. When you talk about replacing and recycling, here are few steps which we can do at our households. First is using replaceable items. We can make a list of items at home, that is glass jars, cloth napkins. We can use instead of paper napkins, cloth racks instead of towels, glass jars. And glass jars can be used as a vase for flowers. It can be used as a pencil holders. So whatever I am sure most of us belong from a traditional household, Indian household, where we had a typical mindset of reusing things. So that system has suddenly gone by, because a lot of products which we are buying nowadays don't have that lifetime. So in a way, we just use it and throw it. But earlier, we used to have that practice that most of the jars, jars, and cloth napkins or cloth rags, whatever it is, we try to utilize it in some or the other way. So that was one of the good practices which we used to do, which is not being continued now. Then second thing is on buying second hand items or repair items. So gradually, as we have moved ahead, and this industrialization and the opening of global markets have happened, now we see the utility of items and has gone away, and we don't think of items in an economic perspective. We just rather think of using it for a single time and then throwing it away. We don't look for opportunities where we can utilize second hand items, or maybe use the existing item, repair the existing item and use it again. Then third thing is reducing food waste. We can plan our daily meals, make a list of ingredients and items which we require on a daily basis. And जैसे हम पुराने समय में स्टोर्स में जो आइटम्स रखे होते थे, हम उसको उस तरह से प्लान करते थे कि अभी उसको ज़रूरत है या नहीं है, या मे भी आपने जो दोपहर को खाना खाया है उसको आप कैसे फिर से यूज कर सकते हैं रात के खाने के लिए। सो इन अ वे हम इस तरह से प्लान करते थे कि फूड को हम मिनिमम से मिनिमम वेस्ट करें। जो आजकल के समय में हम वो प्रैक्टिस से हम दूर जाते जा रहे हैं, एंड वी डोंट कॉन्शियसली थिंक अपॉन इट कि वेदर वी आर वेस्टिंग फूड और नॉट। Then replace and disposing of batteries and electronics properly. So that is again, as we move more and more into using those e-tagged items, electronics items, we don't think of recycling them. And as on date, there are a lot of different companies who have come in this sector, where they help the circular economy, whether they collect the waste and try to recycle them and bring it back to the cycle. But it's on a very small scale, maybe a very small percentage of those items are being recycled. But most of the things lie on the awareness part. People don't realize that they are generating this much amount of electronic waste. Then we talk about transportation. Transportation is again a very important and crucial aspect of our day-to-day lives. So globally, as we are very fond of traveling, we don't realize that by traveling through air, we also generate a lot of carbon footprints. So globally, if we see, the global aviation industry produces around 2% of all human induced carbon dioxide emissions, which is again on a increasing trend, and day by day this percentage is also increasing. Aviation is responsible for 12% of CO2 emissions from all types of transport sources. And in this, we have the largest emission from the road transport. So what we can do here, we can look for, while we are traveling, we should first give, when we talk about a very sustainable kind of travel, we should try to explore the lands which are nearby us. We enjoy trips in our nearby region. What this will lead to, this will help us to appreciate our local culture, the local landscapes, and it will bring us a sense of pride that we belong to a particular region which has a very rich and diverse culture, and it has this kind of landscapes, and we develop we develop a sense of belongingness towards our region. Then what we can do, as I already talked about the aviation fuels and all, which are generating lot of carbon emissions, we look for, while we are planning our trip, we try to take we try to design the itinerary in a way that we take more and more of trains and buses wherever possible. And also, some studies suggest that India is in top 5 of the countries with largest carbon footprint from tourism, which is again a very critical aspect, as we as a country are very much uh, aligned towards reaching the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement, which was done in 2015. So this again is a sector of tourism where we have to make a very conscious call as an individual that we should try to minimize these emissions. Then what we can do is stay with people and not with hotels, large with hotels. This is also a very interesting part of tourism. If we you choose to stay, if we choose for accommodation in homestays, they are very best to get in touch with people while you travel. And based on my personal experience, you can make a lot of long lasting personal relations as well, and it will also help you to get along with the culture of that place, and you try to appreciate that particular culture. Then what we can do, go on long cycling and hiking trips rather than traveling via fossil fuel power transport, especially in very small cities where we have a radius of like 7 to 8 or 9 kilometers. So for that, we can definitely look for cycling as an option. As of now, I agree the infrastructure is not such that allows you to cycle. But if we start promoting this kind of things in our locality and in small municipalities, and we make make the municipalities or the government officials to intervene in such policies and make the infrastructure in that way. I'm sure that will lead to a lot of infrastructure and roads for this kind of cycling which we are planning. Cycling can, as we also know about the good part, the health benefits from cycling, that it reduces serious diseases such as stroke, heart attack, cancers, diabetes. It's also helpful in reducing obesity and arthritis. And riding a bike while we have a group, it's a fun thing. It's a healthy thing, and moreover, it's a type of exercise which can be practiced irrespective of the age group. And globally, if we see, we have a lot of examples. Countries like Netherlands have well dedicated paths for people using bicycles, and even Prime Minister from Netherlands uses bicycle to go to work. The country cycles so much that they save carbon emissions equivalent to planting 54 million trees a year. And not surprisingly, they have more cycles than number of people in the country. In India, still, we observe this practice. Still, people from rural areas travel for hours to reach the city for work and earn a daily wage from the work, and then they go back the same day using bicycle. So, in a way, that was a very healthy and more sustainable way of transport, which was being adopted in, which is still being adopted in rural areas. In urban areas, if we talk about daily commuting, gradually people are preferring public transport and carpooling. They have also adopted a lifestyle in a way that and the work, school, etc. are very nearby to their residence, and they try to minimize their time in commuting. Next, again, we come to an important element of sustainability, which is our energy needs. And I will stress more upon this point because I work in this sector mostly. So let's start with the energy needs which we require in our homes. So gradually, what has happened, we have adopted to the Western culture, and the building designs and all are also in a way, we have adopted those practices which are being done in Western countries. So, what has happened due to this? The heating and cooling requirements of our homes have increased. For example, we have maximized the use of glasses in our buildings just to add to the aesthetics. But in a way, we are increasing our heat gain and then enhancing our cooling requirements, that is AC loads and everything, which are usually, again, in a way, we pay those increase in loads through our electricity bills. So it's not a wise idea to just go for any type of glasses in any direction for in a building. So when we talk about the green buildings consultants and the green buildings which are coming up, they try to focus on these few particular points. Earlier, the houses used to be very adaptable to the local climate, but gradually, as we try to follow the Western cultures, we have tried to move out of those practices and try to adopt them, which are more energy intensive, and which is very heavy on our pockets as well. So again, talking about our air conditions which we are using at home, or the geysers which we are using, we have to think consciously on how we are utilizing it on a day to day basis. The central government and the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has also set some energy performance standards for the air conditioners, and have mandated that the default temperature for air conditioners should be around 24 degrees Celsius. This is to promote energy efficiency and reduce power demand. But as such, on a general practice, while we observe, we don't think about this kind of mandate, and how it could impact our uh, finance planning for a month. But when we try to do it, we realize that there is significant savings which we could do by following this very small step, where we decide that each of the air condition which are being used at your homes are being set at 24 degrees centigrade. Because as of now, the new air conditions which would be out in the market from January 2020, that would have a default setting of 24 degrees centigrade. Otherwise, if we have old air conditioners at home, we can try to adopt that default 24 degrees centigrade. Then we should try to use more and more LEDs and CFLs. EESL, which is a energy service company of Government of India. It's the world's largest ESCO. It is 100% owned by a joint venture of NTPC, PFC, REC, and Power Grid. They had they had come up with a very interesting business model which helped to reduce the cost of LEDs by 80%, from around more than 300 rupees in 2014 to around 65 rupees in 2017. So whatever cost reduction happened due to this aggregated demand being created by ESL, that was passed on to the consumers, and now the LEDs are available in the range 60 to 100 rupees, 60 to 100 rupees, with warranty of around 3 to 4 years. Then we can talk about using natural lighting when possible, and keep the lights off. Or we should overcome the habit of turning on lights when not needed. We should effectively use doors and windows of our homes, like while working on laptop or performing any other household work. We can use the space where we receive the natural lighting and avoid artificial use of uh, existing lighting equipments which are available at your home. Switch to alternate use of energy, renewable energy. So now I will talk briefly about what we can how we can intervene through renewable energy solutions, and what is the status of renewable energy in India. So around 22% of electricity produced in India comes about 22% produced in India is lost in distribution. So if we generate 1 unit through our power plant, at the end, at our households, we receive around 0.75 or zero point 0.8 of that particular unit. So it's a significant number, and in few states this percentage is around 30. So again, we have to work more on that. Then, when we talk about the total installed generation in India, in the country, it's around 370 gigawatt, out of which renewable is around 87 gigawatt. And we are trying to increase those capacity and make it around 175 gigawatt by the end of the year 2022. So over the period of last 5 years, we have seen a significant increase in renewable energy capacity, around 200%. And renewable, as of now, have a share of 23%. More, when we have a closer look, we realize that most of the additions have come from solar energy, and mostly solar photovoltaic. Solar capacity increased in the last 5.5 years from 2.6 gigawatt to more than 34 gigawatt now. So let's talk about now solar PV, because it's a very critical element of renewable energy installation in India. And utility scale solar PV is already there in India, and we have seen a significant shift in tariffs of the utility scale solar projects. When we talk about individual stuffs, we talk about solar rooftops and how the solar rooftop market is working in India. I have tried to cover it in a brief. So MNRE data suggests that we have just crossed to 2.5 gigawatt mark as on 31st March 2020 of the installed grid connected solar rooftop. Uh, most of the most of the installations have come for commercial and industrial consumers because they in a way they give they have to pay higher tariffs for the power they consume, and mostly these solar rooftop installations have come up in a capex mode. The opex mode the growth in the opex mode business model have been very constant in last few years. And so basically, in a capex model, the rooftop owner is responsible for O&M of the system after the free maintenance ends. The entire initial capital investment is being taken care of by the rooftop owner. While in RESCO mode or OPEX mode, entire capacity is owned by the developer who takes the initial risk of the project, and he's responsible for O&M throughout the lifetime of the system. But we realized that there are a lot of bottlenecks in this particular solar rooftop sector. This is majorly due to the lack of awareness amongst stakeholders who are being responsible for operation and maintenance practices. Adequately, when we talk about the solar rooftop project, it should last about 20 to 25 years. However, we see and there has been little focus by the installers on operation and maintenance, and this operation and maintenance uh, when we talk about an adequate operation and maintenance practices, we talk about decreasing the downtime of the project, extending the system lifetime, ensuring safety and reducing the risk involved in the project, and uh, all the warranties and the guarantees which are related to the equipments of the solar rooftop project should be in line with the lifetime which we have proposed for the project. When we talk about a very substandard quality of equipments which are being installed in the project, there is a very significant savings. So when we use a tier one module for a particular project and a very renowned inverter in a project, and then we compare it a very substandard module and inverter, we could save around 25% of the project cost, which is very significant cost. And these operation and maintenance costs are a subset of quality and equipment install. So whenever we are planning for a solar rooftop project, we should be very critical about the quality of the project, because operation and maintenance costs are related to the type of procurement we have done. Now we talk about solar cookers and solar thermal equipments, specifically solar cookers, which we can use it on a day-to-day basis. As we all know, half of the world's population is still dependent on fossils generated from cow dung or for their cooking purpose, and every year lakhs of hectares of forest are destroyed to obtain wood. This is not only harmful to the environment, it is also harmful to the health of the people who are mostly they are women who are being engaged in cooking. So there are health issues to them as well when they use fossil fuels for cooking. So we have basically three types of solar cookers. One is box type, other is community type, third one is dish type. And box type cookers are very simple to use. We can use it for preparing dal and chawal on a daily basis. I know few people who have been constantly using that for years now, and it has become a part of their lifestyle. It takes a while to prepare it, but when we talk about the taste of that particular thing, it's quite different from what we use on a from a cooking practice which we generally adopt. When we talk about cooking, community solar cookers, mostly ashrams and community kitchens, and where there is a requirement for cooking for 40 to 50 people. They use those kind of systems. Then we have dish type solar cookers, where there is a parabolic shape reflector that concentrates the sun rays at a focal point, and which can lead to a very high temperature at the focal point. There we can keep our utensil, and we can uh, we can utilize the thermal heat available at that particular location. So typically the limitation with this kind of technologies, why it didn't get accepted in a way, because it takes a lot of time. Around box type cookers may take around 3 hours for cooking in general, while community type may require 1.5 to 2 hours. And there are still a lot of research being going on preparing more efficient cooker technologies, so that the cooking time could be minimized, and the temperature which is achieved through this process is also higher, so that the the particular objective could be met. Now, when we talk about energy, we should also talk about the water resources. So, water is very a crucial element for our day-to-day life. Over 2 billion people live in countries experiencing high water stress. We should use water consciously, and we should appreciate the quantity of water which is available to us on a daily basis. What we can do, there are very simple things by which we can reduce our water consumption. We can simply turn off the water when it's not in use, such as while we are brushing our teeth. There are several general approaches to the design of water saving fixtures. There are a lot of water saving fixtures which are available in the market. We can use it for low flush, dual flush, waterless, and automatic sensor type. Low flow is the simplest and most common, which we use it on toilets, urinal, faucets, and shower heads, which reduces our water consumption. Then we talk about rainwater harvesting. It's time when people have started realizing the need for what rainwater harvesting. This is again a very simple thing which could be adopted, but when we talk about its impact in the long term, it's very significant. So it's just as simple as channelizing the water from your roof into a container that can hold it for future use. Then it's a very common practice in India that people wash their cars, driveways, sidewalks, houses with water. So we should try to avoid that as much as possible and try to use dry methods of cleaning. Then we can think of installing grey water. This could be as simple as a bucket to collect your shower and bath water, and then rerouting your plumbing from your shower, sink, and laundry to water your landscape. So whatever water we have utilized it already, we can use it in our gardens. Then we can think of planting a native plants which are native to that place, rather than growing plants that are not adapted to our climate and may need a lot of extra water. We can grow plants that are adapted to the our climate. In this manner, we can not even we can reduce the need of water, and we can turn our grassy lawn to a very beautiful landscape, where we can in a way promote the bees around, which feed on the wildflowers. So we can, when we talk about the ecosystem, we should also think of having a personal garden like we have in my behind. We can have a community garden where that could be very vital for the bees, because bees are very critical for our ecosystem. They help in pollination around the world. Pollinating creatures, as we all know, they are struggling to survive. Each year, 75% of main food crops globally rely on animal pollination for yield. So this is how these pollinating creatures are important, and if we have an ecosystem around us which helps in their survival, it's in a way we are contributing towards a sustainable ecosystem. Then food security, which is again very critical when we talk about sustainable development goals. How we practice our food habits. More than 70% of the natural ecosystems have been transformed to produce food and animal feed. What we can do to reduce the burden of food on a society, we try to promote we try to consume food which are locally available. The farmer markets, food corporations, and independent local stores where we can go and start purchasing things. Consuming whole and minimal processed foods rather than foods with long, difficult to understand ingredients list. Lesser the food is processed, better it is in nutrition value. Again, this is a very conscious effort from the part of the consumer, where they try to realize what kind of ingredients are being in used in that particular product which they are going to buy, because most of the processed foods which are available in the market are very harmful. They contain lot of preservatives, because when we consume it we don't realize it, and in a way we become addictive to them. Again, it impacts our health as well, and doesn't help the ecosystem as such. So as per WHO, we should use unsaturated vegetable oils, olive oil, sunflower oil. Saturated fats can lead to higher risk of heart disease and stroke. Then, very important point regarding the packaging. We should purchase unpacked and minimal packaged foods and ditch the packaging that creates garbage. Nowadays, we see in supermarkets that even fruits and vegetables, which were easily available in local markets, have been coming in plastic packaging. This take, make, and dispose economic model still largely dominates capital production. Only 14% of plastic packaging used globally is recycled, which is a very small number. The rest of the 86 percent are directly dumped into the ground. Scientists are now working on a natural peel that help to double the life of fresh food and vegetarian food, which in a way also helps to reduce the wastage, because once the food is ready after a slight bit of processing, in the time while it reaches the market, there is a lot of wastage which happens. So this will also reduce those wastages. Worrying 40% ends in food waste, ends its useful life in landfill, while further a third does so in fragile ecosystems such as the ocean. So most of those plastic packaging which are not being processed, they end up in the oceans. We should try to shop in stores with reusable containers. Just a decade ago, जब हम पुराने समय की बात करते हैं, all food was unpackaged or packaged in a biodegradable paper and fibers. So people used to visit in earlier times, as we know, our parents also, they used to visit ration shop with containers for oil, and they other daily needs which are required, they used to have their own containers and use it. But since this plastic bags and all have come up, people have tend to move out of that behavior of taking things to the of taking their own utensils or containers to the market for purchasing. Eat sustainable produce food. Organic is one commonly known term, but organic is not a guarantee of sustainability. So in supermarkets, we see there are a lot of products being marketed in terms of organic, and they are being labeled as organic. But we should get to know the grower and learn more about how they work with the land. Many companies, especially in metro areas, make organic term a marketing hype among consumers, and unnecessarily people tend to purchase it by spending more money. Then when we talk about food, we talk definitely talk about food waste. And when we talk about recycling or utilizing that food waste, we definitely should think of composting it. Composting is recycling done by nature. So composting is the controlled natural decomposition of organic materials such as leaves, grass clippings, and kitchen scraps. There are a lot of a simple basic composting techniques which are easily available on YouTube. We can go through that, and we can make it as a part of our lifestyle. Sending our waste to the landfill is an outdated way of thinking. The trash doesn't break down there and releases methane gas into the environment, causing environmental damage. It can be done in a big city on the balcony of an apartment, this composting thing, or in a spacious background in a suburban setting. And moreover, the food which is being extra, which was prepared extra in any of your meals, that can be that feed can be given to the animals around, which was also again daily practice, daily traditional practice, which we have slightly forgotten nowadays. Then make meals in large quantity that can be eaten many times, saving energy and time. This is again a conscious call. It can't be enforced, but it can have a very different perspective as well. Making meals for a whole family, home, or community is more efficient than each individual preparing as well. Usually, in our traditional, as I already talked about, in our traditional joint families in India, we had the habit of preparing food together, have the food together in a single. The food is being prepared in a single large kitchen, and then the entire family having it. So it was in a way a fun as well. Also, it was emotional when we talk about it emotionally. The emotional touch with amongst the family members, that was also really good. So nowadays we have very small families, so these practices is also ये अभी ये practices अभी कोई follow नहीं कर रहा है. Then, when we talk about food practices, when we go to open markets or thelas around, we should carry reusable dishes. People may think of कि लोग क्या सोचेंगे मैं ऐसे dish और utensils लेके जाऊंगा, but in a way, if we take a conscious call, we as a group of friends or colleagues can start it. Carry reusable dishes, utensils, straws, etc., so that you don't use disposables and create trash. Carrying our own reusable water bottles, as we see in most of the metro cities, we have these water dispensers already available to us. In 2 or 3 rupees, we can have a liter of water. So better to carry our own water bottles and fill it as and when required. And then we can carry mugs for drinks and bowls for snacks like gupchup and all. We should try to avoid the use of straws. And then one more important thing regarding food, how we consume our food. Having food in pattal, which is again Indian eating plate made with broad dry leaves of different trees and stitched with tiny wooden sticks. Having food in on pattal is considered pious for rituals. We usually don't have it on a daily basis, but when we do it very occasionally, so having food in pattal on a daily basis can and also enhances the taste of the food, but it also has health benefits also. We can we can grow our foods, our own food in our own gardens. Just as you see the garden behind, we produce lot of our own food here, and we utilize it for preparing our daily meals. So you can all go through as per your need. You can go through YouTube. There are a lot of there are a lot of videos available which gives you options on what type of food you can grow at home. It's very easy. We can start practicing it if we take a call over it that you want your own grown food, it gives a lot of satisfaction when we see that okay, this particular meal has come from the vegetables which were grown in your own backyard. Then again, one more important aspect of our day-to-day life is our clothing. The fashion industry produces more emissions than the airline industry. That's a very important aspect also. Already it contributes 10% of greenhouse gases and would also require 35% more land by 2013, growing the required raw materials which are being required for our clothes. There will be more stress on the land, and as we all know, we are already in India, we are very short of the availability of land which is being required for other power projects and all. So again, this the demand increase in demand for this kind of raw materials for clothes will again add to the stress upon land. So let's talk about how we can have a sustainable wardrobe. That is to buy things that last longer as usual. Let's consciously think, I probably don't need that as much as I think I need while buying clothes at the store. Moreover, make yourself aware about where my stuff comes from, whether it is a cotton or wool or a leather. We should realize and try to figure it out, because there are a lot of information available online on what kind of raw materials are being used for a particular cloth which we are wearing. So we should try to be conscious about the source of the raw material which is being used. We are it's again optional thing. We can try on a we can try to practice wearing natural fiber clothing, wool, hemp, linen, etc., and transition from clothes which have an added plastic in it, like polyester, nylon, etc. Again, an interesting fact on it, it takes around 20,000 liters of water to produce cotton for a t-shirt and a pair of jeans. We have to look the entire supply chain, not just the stores from where we buy, but not just the manufacturing, but from where we source our raw materials, like extracting it, growing it, and repair clothes as needed, sew, stitch, mend, and patch fabrics, resole shoes. Our parents have been doing those stuff, so why can't we? Yeah. So there are a lot of new initiatives and startups which have come up around this particular concept of repairing old clothes and presenting it in a very new, very fresh and for a different kind of use. But again, it serves our requirement of repairing the clothes. Then next, what we can do, we can try to maximize clothes in our wardrobe which are easy to clean and don't have special cleaning instructions like dry cleaning and all, because those are again very resource intensive and expensive while we give our clothes for laundering. Use biodegradable non-toxic soap or soap nuts. For soap nuts, again, it's a very traditional practice in India. We used to have soap nuts for laundry and cleaning. The soap nut is the dried fruit of Rita tree, and saponin released is a 100% substitute to natural detergents. There are again few companies which have come up in this area which are supplying soap nuts. Soap nuts are hypoallergenic. These are naturally antibacterial and antifungal and are very gentle on the skin. Washing your skin regularly with soap nuts can also help prevent many skin diseases. And these soap nuts, based on the climate, can be grown locally as well. So the chemicals and detergents are absorbed when we use harsh chemicals on for washing our clothes. They get absorbed in our skin, and it may also enter our bloodstream. So whenever we are laundering our clothes, we are using machines we should try to use it on our full loads. This will cut back on the number of loads that we use, that we need to, and it will have a significant savings on the water requirements, energy, and also on the money which is being required. So we should always look for washing machines or machines which have BEE ratings and which have higher efficiencies. Older machines can be used, may use around 40 gallons of water per load, while highly efficient machines can uh, utilize water around 15 gallons. So, which is again a significant savings when we talk about the water being used for washing. Then, what are the practices which we can adopt while we are shopping? So, what we can see now that people have started using the home stitch cloth bags to the market, which we haven't seen in years, because again those bags were replaced with plastic bags which were easily and economically available in the market. Then what we can do, support local small businesses with ethical and sustainable practices. We should we can also think of and ditching those online stores which we already are very much interested in buying and looking for stuffs. We can look for those stuffs online, and when it's buying we can think of buying it from our local stores. This also aligns to our idea of vocal for local. Then investing in quality items that last rather than cheap items that break and need to be replaced. Look for stuffs for which maintenance related services are available in your locality, because usually when we talk about a sub semi urban or small kind of towns and cities, there's a different practice nowadays, that the products are available to you, but when you talk about its maintenance, the maintenance services are not available. So that particular thing impacts the consumer, and they tend to throw that particular product rather than thinking of repairing it. Then what we can do, we can donate unneeded items and find homes for them. Just as I talked about the e-waste which is being generated nowadays, we have lots of mobiles, the other electronic gadgets, laptop. So we don't think of it consciously, how that particular waste is being waste has been treated when we discard it. Most of the cities don't have their proper waste management plan in place. These kind of waste tend generally they are sent to the landfill directly. Now, if we talk about businesses, how the businesses are evolving around sustainability as a criteria, and how things have changed over the years. The last few years have seen a marked increase in corporate sustainable commitment. So, the CSR funds and all are also channelized in a way that it serves the purpose of sustainability as well. Business are starting to look at sustainability as something that should be at the very core of their operations, and not just a nice to have add on for improving their image. Companies want to show that the customers that they are very conscious about the environment and they care about the environment. And whether we accept it or not, our daily lives, including our businesses, are being impacted by extreme weather, climate, the cyclones and all. We are just witnessing all those things on a daily basis now. The pandemic is already here. The source and type of food, water resources, and many more. We know how what kind of things we are consuming it, and what kind of resources we are using it on a daily basis. So I think it's time that we observe and realize the criticality of it, and act individually yet collectively to adopt to the changes proposed by the nature. These actions may require small yet significant steps to change our lifestyles. We discussed a lot of things, small things which you could adopt on a daily basis, and the way we plan, strategize, and operate our businesses in a way that is also in a way that is aligned to sustainability also. So by this, I end my session, and I thank you for being a very patient listener. I would be happy to respond to your queries. Feel free to drop me your queries on sauravmotiwala01 at gmail.com. Thank you.